and welcome to Therabites, where we bring you bite-sized episodes, each one a piece of the puzzle that helps to explain the therapy world, the research behind it all, and how it relates to families. My name is Dr. Dana Poole, physiotherapist and clinical lead at the Healthy Strides Foundation. It is my privilege to be hosting this podcast, one that is directed for families of children with neurodisabilities. We hope to be able to answer some of your questions through this format. To help us navigate our way through these big questions, we have the lovely, the one and only Kate co-hosting this podcast. Welcome, Kate.
Hello, how are we today?
So good. I'll answer on behalf of everyone else listening.
You like that?
Otherwise we'll just be silent.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, good.
Awkward intro, Kate.
Well, here we are again, and it is that lovely time of year where it is spring and everyone seems to have hay fever, and we're all just laughing because you just got your last little cough out there.
I did. Oh, it's a little throat clear.
Yeah. Well, it's perfect. It's perfect.
God, that's good.
Well, here we are again, having another conversation with another question. And what I always love to do is be able to share something that's a little bit off and weird. But this one isn't actually too weird. It actually just follows on from last week's thing.
Okay.
Right. So last week I sort of said I was talking about morning light and how that's really good.
Yes.
And that, raises your cortisol levels for the day, dopamine, it's good for you, do all of that, helps you to settle again to go back to sleep.
Yep.
But on the other side of that, did you know that avoiding bright lights at the end of the day is actually equally as important?
Oh, I did not know that.
So this is very much related to screen lights.
Okay, yeah.
And first of all, I think the where a lot of this research had come from was people who do shift work. Mm-hmm. And people who do shift work and they alter their sort of sleep cycles, it's really challenging.
Yes.
And it can really catch up with you because of when light enters your eyes and the circadian rhythms, and it's particularly hard for people who shift in and out of shift work, like kind of have some days, some nights. Yep. That's really, really hard. So long-term wise, pretty detrimental for your health. Mm. But if you just stick with it and you can just get used to it, that's probably better for you, is what they say. But particularly between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m., we should really be trying to avoid these artificial sources of light or screens because it actually decreases your dopamine levels and can make you feel more anxious, a little bit more down, and it can really affect your day because of how the opposite of what happens because light is so stimulating and dopamine and all those lovely things. But if you do it at night time when you're meant to be sleeping, not so good. So this is for all those, scrollers at night that look at your phone.
Not guilty of that at all.
Oh, I know, right? I had to stop doing it mainly because there's all these little midgies in my house at the moment from all the flowers and indoor plants, and they come to your screen at night time. You're like, oh, okay.
I have the exact same thing.
Do you?
Yeah.
And when you're trying to kill them off your screen, you're like, oh,
you're going to clean your screen.
It's time to turn this off and go to bed. Like, that's right. Yeah. So, so the opposite is true as well. So try to get that light in the beginning of the day and try to avoid artificial light at the end of the day.
There you go.
A way to a better life. There you go.
Amazing.
Well, today you have another question for me, I know.
Yes. Okay. Mm-hmm. So this question is from one of our listeners and it's regarding babies that are born preterm.
Okay.
So this parent knows there can be a link between preterm birth and neurodisability. Mm-hmm. It's something that they know to monitor for their beautiful little baby, but they are unclear on when it when it would show itself and how to make sure that they're not missing anything.
Yep.
So I know firsthand I've experienced and spoken to many other parents that have also had concerns dismissed when we've gone or been told to wait a little bit longer or not to worry about your child's development. And I just think it's so important for parents to be informed and empowered to follow up their concerns, especially if their child is at a higher risk of developmental delays.
Yeah.
So I guess we would love to know, can you tell us a little bit more about what this link is, the research behind it, and what parents of preterm babies should be looking for developmentally as their child grows?
Okay. Gosh, that's a big question.
It is a big question.
Okay. Well, it's one that's so important to talk about. And I guess, first of all, when we're talking about preterm, we're talking about children born before 37 weeks.
Yes.
And of course, you can have very early preterm. And so when that tends to happen, you should be under some sort of surveillance system within the hospital systems anyway, certainly in a lot of developed countries. There are these monitoring programs for high risk So that group aside, there's a whole group of families who sort of sit in between that, they're not at high risk and they're not sure. So they're still pre-37 weeks. Now, the really important thing to know about this is that regardless of whether you're under a surveillance system or not, there's just some really important things that you can be doing as a parent to just be tracking what your child is doing as well.
Okay.
And so I'll talk a little bit about that. But then on the other side of it is also just being able to make sure that when you are, then if you're doing all of these things, then it helps you with a conversation with whoever's monitoring you. So it might be your child health nurse, it might be your GP, it might be a pediatrician to be talking about these. Because I think sometimes the focus has always been very motor based. It's like, are they rolling? Are they crawling? Are they sitting? And yes, that can definitely give you the signs of whether there is a delay there. But the other part to that as well is we want to make sure we're also thinking about their cognition. So when we talk about cognition, it's about how much eye contact they're making, the babbling, and all those other signs as well. So before, I guess, you can probably have that conversation with whoever's assessing and for you to raise those concerns. The first thing to note is that if your child is born preterm, it just means we want to make sure we're really intentional about the things we're doing with your baby.
Yeah.
And there is a really lovely study that was done, actually just published early this year.
Okay.
And it's actually a Cochrane review. So a Cochrane review is the highest level of a systematic review possible. So all these researchers, they can do all this research and they'll be in their own little context that gets published.
Yeah.
And then you can do a systematic review where you take all of those research studies and you compile them, put them as one. So you basically summarize it.
Yeah.
So you increase the numbers that way, so it's more generalizable. It's a bigger study.
Yeah.
But the Cochrane review is like that extra systematic review on steroids.
Oh,
I never really want to do one because it's so much hard work.
Sounds like it.
So much time.
Great for when you want to know something.
Exactly. It just summarizes the area really well. And so this group of researchers based out of Melbourne, led by Professor Alicia Spittle, she's done one of these, I think it's the third one she's done. So she reviews them every 6 or 7 years and she kind of, when I last spoke to her, she's like, give me another 5 years before I do the next one. Because it's so comprehensive.
Yeah.
So this was published. It's freely available for anyone if you want to go online. So you just go to Cochrane Review.
Right.
And this is called Early Developmental Intervention Programs Provided Post-Hospital Discharge to Prevent Motor and Cognitive Impairment in Preterm Infants. So basically what they really want to look at is as soon as a child is born preterm, they would provide an intervention regardless.
Okay.
And the value and importance of that is, if nothing's been picked up yet, you're doing something that's really productive for that child. Yeah. And that way, if it does come along the way and you go, oh, there is a bit more of a delay there, then you've already been doing the early intervention, which is so important. And this early intervention is really based on motor skills, but it's also based on parent and infant relationships. And that is what the cognition component is. So it's singing, it's lots of eye contact, it's a lot of, repetition and babbling back and forth with each other, all that kind of thing. So that's really valuable early intervention. And they found that if you do that, regardless of whether you have a diagnosis or not, you get significant improvements in your motor outcomes.
Okay.
So ability to achieve those milestones. And you actually have better cognition outcomes as well.
Okay.
Under 3 years of age. So that you can do something really productive. So that means, seeing a physiotherapist, an occupational therapist, or a speech pathologist to help with those interactions.
Yeah.
You don't need them all the time. You might just need some ideas of how you can get going.
Yeah.
And if you do that, you can have significantly improved outcomes. It doesn't last till the time they're in school age, which makes sense because you need to do school age appropriate things.
Yes.
Like those don't last, but they have shown that is what you can do in those early stages.
That's amazing.
So that just gives you a lot of power in terms of what you can do in the meantime as you're going through, appointments for reviews, but it also then gives you something really tangible to report to the person that you've seen. You go, look, we've been working on this, we've been working on rolling, and I've been, tried it this way, and they still find it a little bit difficult. What do you think? And so now you're sort of having a more productive conversation of what you've seen.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if you had to recommend sort of like a time frame, like would it potentially be maybe if you popped in and saw a physio, for example, once a month?
Yeah, even just to get started. Yeah, definitely. So maybe at least have that initial assessment, let them know that, you know, the baby's preterm.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that we can do in the meantime? Your pediatrician, your child health nurse should be monitoring them as part of the normal process anyway. But at least this way you've got some really specific ideas and that you can go. I don't think you need too much more ongoing than that unless there's a bit more of a concern and, you know, your pediatrician or your child health nurse will let you know about that.
Yes.
But it's just been really productive of the time that you've already got.
Yeah.
And it's part of normal play, but you're just a bit more intentional, you know, you're just really focused on those areas.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if you are seeing a pediatrician or a child health nurse, you've got some concerns and they do let's wait a bit longer, but you're a parent and you're thinking, I don't really want to wait a bit longer. I want to know what I can do to help this now.
Yep.
What's your best advice for that scenario?
Yeah, best advice in that scenario. So if you feel like, you know, the people who you're going to see are kind of like, oh, no, let's see what happens from there. I would still, and if you're worried, I would still be just practicing those activities that you see from your OT or your physio on a daily basis. Okay. Now, if you are really genuinely concerned after doing all of that, then that's the time where you might want to get a second opinion because you're worried. You don't want things to be missed. Yep. You always hear about stories of people who do get missed from time to time. Yeah. That's really scary. You don't know whether that's going to be you. Yeah.
It'd be a lot of weight.
It is a lot of weight, yeah. So having that second opinion is really good. And this is why, you know, finding a good physio or OT or speech pathologist that is credible, who is grounded in research and evidence. I wouldn't see just anyone. If it was my child, I want to see someone who I know is up to date. That's right. Yeah, you want to know their credentials. So be careful of what you see just on social media. I'm not saying all people on social media are not good. It's just you want to discern one from the other. Yes. You know, references, ask your pediatrician who are some good physios or OTs. Yeah. Having that kind of person as a sounding board for you is really important. So getting the right person. And then if you still find that, you know, your child's not quite meeting their milestones, and you might be able to tell because you might be going to groups, for example, and you sort of can see there, that will help give you...
Or daycare. Daycare might be flagging something.
That's right.
With you.
Yep. Then, you know, you can push and maybe find someone else. Yeah. I don't know. I think we used to think that once you've been allocated someone, that's the person you have for life and you feel like you can't go anywhere. Yeah. Do you feel that?
Or you feel some weird loyalty to them even though you're questioning what they're saying.
Yeah, that's right.
You don't want to upset people.
Yeah. I think being honest is really good. And if in the appointment they're literally saying, look, I think they're fine, then you as a parent, if you're not feeling that great about it, say, look, I disagree. This is what I'm seeing. Is there someone that you can send me to for a second opinion? And then keep it really open. Yeah. No one should be offended. Yeah. At the end of the day, and if they do get offended, it's like, oh, you know, maybe they're not the right people for your team because they want the best for you. So, you know, there's definitely risk with preterm. Get on to just doing some great activities. It'll be really fun, part of your daily routine. Yeah. Gives you something to look at and to report to when you see your child health nurse and your pediatrician. And if you're still not feeling that great about it, have that conversation about getting a second opinion.
Yeah. And I also know that the child development services in Australia are fantastic as well. So you don't even need a referral.
No, that's true.
You can contact them and let them know you've got concerns. Yep. And same with Wansley, with the NDIS. Again, you just fill out what your concerns are and they put you in touch with a specialist that can then help you determine if they need some extra help or not. Yeah. So we're just so lucky to have all of these resources available to us. Yeah. Yeah. And government funded. It's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it just takes you following up. We've spoken about it before about your intuition. Yes. And your intuition is really valuable. So if you want to, you know, speak up and ask someone and there'll be services. Silly. No, not at all.
That's definitely don't feel silly.
Yeah. 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 That was a good question.
That was a really good question. I hope that was helpful to the parent that sent that one in.
Yeah, how lovely.
And to all the other parents out there probably wondering the same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, look, so much support around you. If you've got more questions about this, reach out to us. If there's something else that you want us to delve into, we can do that, hey?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that question. Hopefully it was helpful and we'll talk to you all again really soon. Bye.
Bye.